So as a futurist, it's not my job to predict the future because I totally missed COVID, but it, it is my job to understand emerging trends and to make sense of them so that you can plan for various scenarios in the future. And right now, as you can imagine, generative AI, not just artificial intelligence, but generative AI is keeping me pretty busy. We all know that if you ask ChatGPT a question, it'll give you a response, and it's a pretty good response most of the time. And that type of AI, all it's doing is it's studying a whole bunch of word patterns to understand what the next word might be. It does it a lot better than me, but that's really how it works. But now we're seeing the next wave of generative AI come out, which is reasoning, which is wild, where it can take a problem and test itself. How good is its answer for you so that I can give you a better answer before it actually gives you the answer. And then the next wave after that is where you ask it to do something to an outcome. So let's say you want to book a flight home from Arizona and arrange a car. One agent will talk to the travel agent, the car agent, the calendar agent, and be able to complete the task for you from beginning to end. And I share this with you because it's nonstop. And I think that's the point. We just have to now be open, as Michael was sharing earlier. We have to have a mind shift for openness. And it isn't just about what's on the horizon that matters, bless you. It's about what has happened and how that's changing where we're going moving forward. And I'd like to share some of those findings with you today. In addition to being a futurist, I'm also a digital anthropologist. I've been studying over the past 20 years how technology has been changing the consumer and also the employee. So that as we think about physical space, as we think about digital journeys, as we think about apps, as we think about work and customer experience, that all of these things factor into our strategies moving forward. So it isn't just about checking boxes, it's about reimagining the future based on where people are evolving. And nothing says innovation and the future like PowerPoint slides. So I have a bunch of them for you. And if any of this is interesting to you, I'll ask Michael to make sure you get a copy of it. So one of the projects I had to do was for the International Council of Shopping Centers a while back. And my task was to study how smartphones, how the internet, how apps were changing people's desire to shop and where physically they would shop. And then on top of that, how did COVID change their aspirations? How they think about spending time in the real world when they're not on Roblox or some virtual world. And the most interesting thing that I trace back to the 1950s when some of the first shopping malls were created was the sense of community, bringing life to the suburbs so that they were their own cultural epicenters as well. And that sense of community actually is the spirit, believe it or not, in an era of AI, people, community, being human is the essence of actually where we're going from here, which is sort of ironic with artificial intelligence. Not that I expect you to read this whole quote, but this is from someone I talked to at Westfield. And Stephen had said that the most interesting thing wasn't just the shift about community or just behaviors. It was this idea that shopping itself, retail itself was evolving. That it used to be about proximity, it used to be about design, but now it's also about relationships. Now it's about physical and digital experiences coming together because they're totally blurred. When someone goes online to shop, whether they start at Google or whether they start at YouTube or whether it's TikTok, it's probably always TikTok, or Instagram, that those journeys don't just take you to some site that's overseas, it takes you to a space that you want to physically see or be in, and or connected to a site that keeps everything holistic. It's a new grab from attention to in-person. How someone feels in those moments during their journey is what's evolving. And it is both the retailers and also the commercial side of the equation, their job to ensure that that journey is relevant to a consumer who has an entirely new set of needs that also keep evolving. And it brings me back to the Steve Jobs days of Apple. He used to say that Apple sat at the intersection of liberal arts and technology. And what he was really saying is that they kept people at the center of every decision that they were making about the future. And most of the time it worked. But it wasn't just about what trends do we need to be in front of so that we have a product that the consumer wants. It was always about their aspiration. What are they feeling? Who are they becoming? What do they value? And how can we manifest that into a product category and a product series, and ultimately into retail? And if you don't know the original story about Apple's retail stores as they were dreaming them up, it's very similar to the iPhone. If you haven't heard the iPhone story, I could tell you that another day. But the store itself, he didn't want anybody to help him design a store that worked in retail. He specifically looked at people who worked in hospitality, in particular Ritz-Carlton. Sorry, Omni. Because he wanted people to feel like they were walking into a space where they felt like it was special, that they were known, that it was familiar, and that it was intuitive. And that's really the magic of this moment. It's getting back to basics. This quote reminds me of my work every time I do research, because as a geek, it's really easy to get caught up in all the tech. We spend a lot of time designing the bridge, but not enough time thinking about the people who are crossing it. In this moment, the consumer stands at an intersection that is unlike any other time in history, partly due to technology, and also partly due to the effects of shutting the world down for a couple of years. This is a series that I wrote in Worth magazine recently. And this is the latest article that it really just dives into this convergence of the introvert economy, the attention economy, and now the AI economy. It's a fancy Venn diagram for you. And at the center is Generation Novel, or Gen N as I call it. Typically we'll talk about generations as Generation Z, Generation Alpha, Generation X, Millennials. But now, with the convergence of these trends, what we're seeing is a blurring of those demographics. It isn't just about whether or not you're 17 or you're 35. You actually share similar behaviors now with the convergence of these technologies, with these trends, with a pandemic. And so I called it Generation Novel because novel just means, well, like novel coronavirus, but novel means new and unusual. And so paying attention to these broader trends helps me understand how to make sense of not just how I talk to them, but also how I design for them, or how I think about space, how I think about products, how I think about services, how I think about policies. So for example, people feel an incredible amount of anxiety that's caused them to have their own Control-Alt-Delete moment in their personal lives. People are rethinking major milestones and the very meaning of success. So for example, I've done work for a lot of luxury brands where that brand is no longer the aspirational or iconic brand that it used to be for someone who doesn't see that as a quintessential element of their success trajectory. Doesn't mean that it can't be, it just means that they have to rethink the essence of their value proposition, what it is that they stand for in order to be appealing to a consumer who's changing. Since 2020, half of consumers say that everything that's happened since has made them question their life choices. And this is pretty wild because it gets really deep. If you think about what you do on the weekend, if you think about the people on your short list on your phone of who's your speed dial, if you still make phone calls, that is. If you think about who you want to go to dinner with, those circles have actually gotten very small and much more intentional, to the point where we won't get into it today. It's part of the introvert economy, where there's a loneliness pandemic now that's starting to take place, where dating's a mess. In fact, the top 10 things that people talk to their therapists about, 6 of them are about online dating apps. If you're married, stay that way. In fact, to the point where there's a hot new app in New York called Kindred. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. But Kindred is all about randomly setting up something. It's not like Meetup. It's much more specific. If you want to play pickleball tomorrow afternoon, you put that up in Kindred, and you will get people who want to play pickleball with you tomorrow afternoon, because that's how disconnected people's social lives are right now. And all of that adds up into how people want to spend their time, where they want to go, and who they want to do it with. In fact, almost half of consumers say that they're planning less than a year into the future, if at all. So they're living a bit more spontaneous. University is becoming a thing as to whether or not people want to finish school or go to it at all, whether or not people want to get married, or for your parents, I'm one of them, whether or not they want to leave your home. Empty nesters might be a thing of the past if this continues. This is one of the most interesting trends. This is part of the introvert economy that I've seen in a long time. I was talking to a head of a restaurant group recently, and he had posted a tweet, if that's what you still call them now that it's X, whatever it is. He had posted something on X that said, when did 5 o'clock become the new 8 o'clock for reservations? A lot of people, if they go out, are choosing to go earlier, to the point where restaurants are closing earlier to accommodate the economies of what happens when all of your group shows up at 5 o'clock. In fact, people are even making plans for the weekend the way that they used to. They're choosing to watch Netflix. They're choosing to play online games. They're choosing to be online. And all of this is happening because it feels comfortable to them after a couple of years of norms of just doing that very thing. So to pull them out, to attract them to some place, has to now start catering to these emotional anchors that have changed their value proposition and also their values. For example, the 5 o'clock phenomenon that's happening has also led to people questioning the future of late night venues, like clubs, for example. Since 2020, over 3,000 late night venues in London have closed. So the idea of where I go and how I spend my time as a consumer is fundamentally shifting. But it's not just because of COVID. It's because of every revolution that hits a consumer that we just haven't paid attention to. In hindsight, we can. If you think about Amazon.com and the launch of e-commerce, if you think about the entire music industry when iTunes came out, every single one of these has changed behaviors. And those behaviors don't just revert. They continuously evolve and build upon one another. And as someone who helps CEOs of companies all over the place, every industry, it's these behaviors that no one in the organization pays attention to. And it's a big shift for them to actually have to be customer-centric. Everybody says they're customer-centric, but these behaviors are so important that they make sense once you pay attention to them in order to see not just the errors of your policies or your processes, but it also is supposed to inspire you as a human being to see opportunities for innovation. So what you're looking at here is a chart that dates back to when the iPhone first launched. And the little red rectangles that you see at the bottom are voice data. So those are the people using the iPhone to make phone calls. The big maroon or burgundy rectangles is data. And so as you can see, over the years, people don't use their iPhone as a phone. And if you had to ask generationally, hey, I want you to use your hand to mimic making a phone call, some of us would do this. Some people would do this. And some people would say, what's a phone call? Because it's just not fundamentally how they communicate. Here's another fun stat. This is corollary. It's always debatable. What you're looking at on the left is when iPhones launched and the sales of chewing gum over the years. The theory goes like this, that when the iPhone launched, people stopped paying attention to gum in the checkout counter because they were on their screens. This is true. Chewing gum has fallen since then. I don't know if you remember commercials maybe a few years ago where they were trying to make chewing gum look really cool. Like, here's someone standing next to a car. Here's someone standing next to a car chewing gum. Who looks cooler? Was to try to reroute the drop in sales. Now, whether it's because of the iPhone or not, it is a shift that has happened over time. But let me share some other shifts that happen. And this factors directly into not just how you design your app or your online space, but your physical space, your commercial space. Because what's happening is now people are becoming increasingly impatient as a result of their relationship with technology. So some of the work I used to do with Uber looked at competitors. In the US, their primary competitor was Lyft, never taxis. But the real competitor wasn't Lyft, it was impatience. So for example, we studied how long was too long to wait for an Uber before you opened the Lyft app. And it's something we all do. I used to have really geeky friends that had two phones, one for Lyft and one for Uber, to see which one would get to them sooner. Because having a car come to where they are to pick them up wasn't enough, because no one remembers what it was like before taxis, where you would try to flag one down and they would just pass you by. The number in New York was 5 minutes. If the car was further than 5 minutes away, they would open another app to see if it was closer. And if any of you use DoorDash, this is also true for food delivery. So I don't know if you remember a time when you ordered DoorDash and you would just be told that your food would be there in 30 to 45 minutes and you would just trust it. If it wasn't there in 30 to 45 minutes, the first thing you did was you went to the app to complain, and they would give you a credit, they would refund your amount, you get free food. So they figured out that one way to counter impatience was to put the icon of the car in the app so you could see where it was en route to you. And when they put that in the app, emails and chats dropped by over 50%, just simply because, oh, okay, I see it's coming to me. You didn't like it, but you didn't complain as much as you did in the past. So now you add to that facilities, stores, restaurants, since COVID, adding curbside pickup, buy online, pickup in store, and that impatience continues to evolve. In fact, I studied, once these things were rolled out, the same thing as Uber. We knew impatience was going to become a factor. So we studied what were the elements consumers didn't like about this thing that they loved when it first came out. Oh, this is fantastic. I'm going to use this all the time. I don't need to spend my time running through a space when I can just get what I need, pick it up, and go. So the things at the beginning of this rollout that they wanted were dedicated parking spaces, which you see now. They also wanted, if they had to come into the store, a dedicated line. because they didn't want to stand in line in customer service with all the analog people. That is literally what they said. I didn't know analog was its own class. They also said that if they do have to park and someone's coming to them, they want to be out in 2 minutes. And these are incredible numbers of which, when all of these services were designed, weren't factored into them because we thought it was cool enough just to get this rolled out. But it's playing out in consumerism everywhere. Consumers, for example, are demanding that artists release secondary tracks. For those who remember singles, where you had an A-side and a B-side single, they're requesting that the B-side is a faster version of the song. For those who listen to podcasts, do you listen to it faster than 1x? Do you listen to it at 1.2 or 1.5x? Or do you watch videos at faster speeds? The truth is that a lot of us are, because it's sort of an indication of that impatience in motion. We now have people who, when they shop, just need to know where everything is so they don't appreciate the space in front of them so they can get in and out. Kind of like the chewing gum phenomenon. They just want to get what they need, and this changes the entire way that we have to think about space design, because you still need that impromptu purchase. You still need people to appreciate the space around them, because you're combating screen addiction.
This is how drone delivery works.
This is a wing delivery drone. It's 11 pounds and can deliver packages within a 6-mile radius of its home base. In this case, Walmart in the Dallas area. You may not have this in your area just yet, but for people living in the Dallas area or in Christiansburg, Virginia, it is totally normal to see a drone deliver a package in your neighborhood. Here's how it works. The drones sit here on their charging pads in their nest waiting for an order. Once someone places an order in the wing delivery app, the order is packed in this tote. The drone will take off from its pad and let down this yellow clip, which an employee will use to attach the tote. This was incredibly fun to do, by the way. I had to go through training to do this. And finally, the drone will deliver the package within 30 minutes or less from the time of ordering. So you might think, wow, an invention for incredibly lazy people. And yeah, maybe, but consider this. You're in the middle of a science experiment and you've forgotten one ingredient, or maybe you need ice cream.
You just don't go backwards once these types of services come out. And it changes now how we have to think about spatial design, how we attract people to space and what they do when they're in that space. But just to give you an example, just like Uber, just like buy online or curbside pickup, as drone delivery is rolling out, this is a quote from one of the CEOs of drone companies, says, people go from science fiction to entitlement pretty quickly. For 7 days, it's pure magic. And then on day 8, they look at their watch and they say, you're 30 seconds late. It's never enough. And it's true for even AI.
The world had like a 2-week freak out with GPT-4, right? This changes everything. AGI is coming tomorrow. There are no jobs by the end of the year. And now people are like, why is it so slow?
That's literally what happened. And it's just happening now as they're introducing their reasoning model that just came out this week. People are complaining about how slow the reasoning model is and not taking into account that artificial intelligence is helping them solve a problem that takes 45 seconds versus hours to solve.
Reimagining AI Pen. It's a standalone device and software platform built from the ground up for AI. Engagement comes through your voice, touch, gesture, the laser ink display. Play the song How Music Makes You Feel Better. Weather, the date, how much protein?
These almonds have 15 grams of protein.
How much is this online?
This is $28 online.
We'll tap. Staying in the moment and generating a gorgeous image.
This is just one of the AI devices that you'll see people wearing over the next year everywhere they go. The more popular one you'll see is the Meta Ray-Ban sunglasses that have speakers and microphones built in so that you could talk to your glasses and solve or factor in or engage artificial intelligence in real time. So I have a pair, I'm not gonna lie, and I my killer app, the way I justified it for my wife before I bought it, was we took a family trip to Italy, and I don't speak Italian. And so the idea was that I could look at a menu, I could look at a sign, and have the glasses translate it for me, and indeed it does. It reads to you what you're looking at, or you could look at a historical landmark and have it tell you what you're looking at and the historical significance of it. It was amazing, but I also realized in hindsight how crazy I must have looked to people standing around me while I'm talking to myself. Tell me what I'm looking at. What are you doing? No, it's artificial intelligence.
A 22-year-old in India just created the first ChatGPT homework machine. This machine will write out all your assignments in your own handwriting. All you have to do is position the paper in the right spot. It even turns the pages for you. As ChatGPT use becomes more common among students, tools like this might make it harder for educators to determine what's real and what's automated. Personally, I feel like if you're smart enough to build an entire machine that automates your homework, you should never have to do homework again.
This is true. I agree with that. What's fascinating about this is that we all know students are using ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity to do their homework. And so schools, universities, they're all using new types of software to detect artificial intelligence in homework. So students are using other services to make their artificial intelligence work look more human. We're not going backwards. And all of this now factors into a consumer who is about to, and this is no joke, use a digital twin powered by AI to date other digital twins so that when you do go on a date, they've been qualified. This is the world in which we're living in. But I refer to today's consumer as the accidental narcissist. All of these technologies, all of these experiences are catering to them. They're making them move faster. They're making them more empowered, more capable, more informed. And as a result, their relationship with digital space, with physical space, right, they carry all of this with them everywhere they're going. Do I really want to be outside? Do I really want to be surrounded by people? I really want to get in and out of here faster. Even Disneyland has to factor in all of these types of behaviors and evolutions into their cues, into their app, how they move people through, how they design spaces, what spaces they still need and what spaces need to go away for this modern consumer. This is a long, super duper quote, but it basically says that this has been happening for a really long time. This is Jeff Bezos, and he said that one thing he loves about customers is that they're divinely discontent, which is a nice way of saying the accidental narcissist. People have a ferocious appetite for a better way, and yesterday's wow quickly becomes today's ordinary. And he concludes with, you cannot rest on your laurels in this world. Customers won't have it. And if you think about it, Amazon launched in 1994, and they're still competing for the future today. Most of the companies that I work with, even in an era of AI, are still trying to figure out how to use all of this stuff to put it into the box that they have today. How does this work within business as usual? Well, AI, we could automate. We could cut jobs. We could save money. But in reality, every generational shift, every technological disruption that has happened going back to Internet 1.0, they've managed to successfully do just that. Take the technology and put it in the box. Take the trends and put it in the box. When the smartphone came out, when the iPhone came out, no one thought to make the mobile web or e-commerce experience more revolutionary at the time. They just said, take that website and make it work on a smaller screen. The first two trends when that happened were adaptive and responsive design. But then you get companies like TikTok or Instagram that said, well, why would we take that experience on an entirely new platform? Let's reimagine it. And so for the most part, they've been able to coexist, business as usual and innovation. But now AI actually is going to force businesses out of that box. Because the evolution of AI, what we see today, what we see 3 years from now, what we see 5 years from now is going to be exponentially greater. We can't even imagine the types of things we're going to be able to do with it, but consumers will figure it out. And everything that they see, everything that they touch, everything that they do will be in concert, in sync with this empowerment, with these new experiences. So I believe if you're waiting for that playbook, if you're waiting for someone to tell you what to do, this is the exact moment when you're on the wrong side of innovation. We need more curiosity. We need more imagination. We need people asking harder questions. What do I not know that I need to know? Because AI is only gathering more and more steam, and this time CEOs are leaning in. They didn't necessarily lean in like, hey, what's our mobile phone strategy? But they are leaning in with AI. In fact, since the launch of ChatGPT, CEOs have mentioned generative AI 40,000 times in earnings calls. And now they're being held accountable to do something about it. And so it isn't just about how you use AI to attract or engage the consumer. It's how do you think about AI in your everyday work. And I want to share with you sort of this vision to maybe inspire a little bit more question or curiosity or exploration. Because the thing about just Gen AI, not even AI, just Gen AI, is its duality. Most companies see it as cost cutting or cost control, but it also helps you reimagine everything. How you work, your workflows, your processes. So today, and every technological revolution that we've experienced, we've used technology to get incrementally better. Cut costs, scale, be more productive, make things more efficient. And that linear scale has delivered growth. So this is why executives lean on this when they're looking at, for example, Gen AI. Because it's historically how businesses grow and increase margins, especially in retail. But now, generative AI doesn't let you just do what you did better. It helps you start to do things you couldn't do yesterday. And that's the part that's so hard to grasp, because we don't know what we don't know until we see it. And what AI is asking of you is to start exploring the unknown. Because once other people start to see it and you're not there, it isn't that you become linear in terms of behind, it's that you become exponentially behind. ChatGPT 3 isn't as smart or capable as ChatGPT 4. In fact, the capability growth between those two was 10x. And if we assume a 10x gain between 4 and 5 and 5 and 6, it becomes exponentially greater versus linear. And the space between that exponential growth is disruption. And so if we're not actively challenging ourselves, challenging our own assumptions, challenging our own ways of working or our own models for what success can look like, we aren't actually using these tools to challenge what we believe or challenge what we think is possible, then we're stuck on that white curve. And at some point, it's no longer good enough. So this is that Control-Alt-Delete moment, not just for consumers, but ourselves as leaders, as executives, that everything that we can imagine moving forward for 2025 and beyond now has to look toward that exponential curve. It's the relationship between iteration, so doing what you did yesterday better tomorrow, and innovation, creating new value, doing what you didn't do yesterday tomorrow. And all of these models come down to this evolution of consumer experiences. How can we think about space? How can we think about experience? Because the one constant of the consumer is that they still are human, that they still want what's most important to them, what's best for them, what they value, what they like. And experience isn't just human, it's emotional. So the word experience is just simply what you feel in a moment and what you do about it. And so this new world of spatial design is now taking into account space to evoke the emotions of someone who's distracted, someone who's impatient, someone who's accidentally narcissistic, to bring to life the things they love online, the things they love in the real world, to completely reimagine space. And even though Apple's Vision Pro didn't break the charts in terms of sales, what it did do is unlock the relationship between physical space and digital space in the real world. At some point, just like the Meta glasses that I wore in Italy, you will just wear regular glasses until you get contact lenses embedded, which they're already testing, I'm sorry to say, to make the world come to life in entirely new ways. This is the Singapore airport, by the way, one of my favorite airports in the world, where I actually book lag time in between flights so I can run around and just enjoy the space because it's so exhilarating, so special. But what they do, and what like so many innovators are doing, is employ innovation centers to constantly understand this evolution, constantly understand the consumer, constantly understand technology, and experiment with space in real time. This is secret cinema in England, where the movies come to life and you become part of the movie. All kinds of experimentation. This is Apple's Vision Pro. This is actually a friend of mine. I have a lot of geeky friends. This is him working on an airplane. And if you thought I sounded weird talking to myself in Italy, I can't imagine what the person next to him on the plane is thinking. What is this guy doing? But as you can see, he's got a pretty cool workspace. And so space itself is now being actively reimagined to bring to life these new types of experiences. And once people see them, they don't unsee them. So companies like Nike, companies like Lego are starting to dedicate parts of their high-impact stores, like the Singapore airport, to explore new uses of space. How do we create space that caters to a digital-first and AI-first brain that doesn't operate like the consumer that we designed original shopping centers for in the 1950s? So Best Buy, Panera, they're looking at ways to get people through, to get people feeling like they're not that analog customer, that everything feels more refreshing, more intuitive, like the way that their digital apps make them feel. In fact, user experience in digital is being applied. Game design is being applied now to physical space because people don't put their phone down and then see the world as an analog consumer anymore. They see it as one thing. And so for some of us, this looks crazy and wild and I don't want any of it. And for other consumers, this is exactly how I would expect to see the physical world. And it's only continuing. This is a store of the future in the Middle East.
So this is the store of the future. Here we are basically observed in order
And observed,
to,
you're talking about cameras.
I'm talking about all the cameras around us, in order to actually get the most personalized experience possible. It's a digital and physical shopping experience.
And this is a new word.
It's a phygital shopping experience.
Digital.
This is the future.
That's a word.
Choose a piece, since this is women wear.
Okay. It would be that. Okay.
See?
Oh!
Now, you see it? The space is much more modular.
Yeah.
And the great thing about it is the fact that every action that we do in this physical space is actually computed. This is the brain.
The brain
of the store.
Like
this is where actually everything comes together.
Okay.
Because out of this, we really understand.
Phygital is a word I just cannot get my mind around, but it is what it is. The back of that store was basically a control room. And there's technologies, for example, like I work with a company called G2K that uses computer vision, AI to track, almost like a surveillance state, but to track everything you do, everything that's on the shelves in real time, to predict when we might have to restock or order something, or to predict where you might go next in the store and how to draw your attention to certain areas for specials, for example. But the idea of physical space and online coming together, augmented reality, 3 dimensions, all of this is changing the expectations of the consumer. And to bring that down is to go back to Jeff Bezos' quote about the evolving consumer, is to just use all of this stuff to be human, but not just human, to be empathetic. And understand that we are not our consumer. So we have to understand them. And Jeff Bezos has this philosophy called day one. He approaches every day, every strategy, every decision, every investment as if it's the first day. Day 2, he says, is followed by stasis, irrelevance, and death. And that's why every day is day 1. So I'll leave you with these notes as we are at time. But it's really about understanding people, their aspirations, what they value, and how they're evolving. Thank you very much.